For 3 long years, I was the captive husband of an obsessive, pathologically possessive woman. Then she got in a car wreck and lost her memory. Her family celebrated like it was the 4th of July. They dragged me to the front of the line at the courthouse, slammed a $50 million check in my hand, and finalized our divorce before the ink on the doctor's report was even dry. My former father-in-law jabbed a finger in my face, his voice a low growl. Take the money and get on the first flight to Phuket. If you ever show your face in front of her again, I'll make you regret it. I packed my bags that night. With a king's ransom in my account, I spent my days on foreign beaches, watching the tide roll in and the bikinis roll by. Life was good, until one afternoon on a coastline in the Maldives, when a familiar, cloying stare coiled around the back of my neck like a snake. I turned and met her eyes, red-rimmed with a terrifying, single-minded focus. Her long, elegant fingers toyed with a pair of solid gold handcuffs. A sickeningly sweet smile played on her lips. Well, hello there, Mr. Prey. You smell an awful lot like my future husband. Why don't we just skip the dating part? Her lines were even crazier than before. My skin crawled. Without even grabbing my shoes, I booked a flight to Bali and ran. But when I woke up next, I was shackled to the all-too-familiar leather bed frame. Her hot tears splashed on my neck. I went to so much trouble to catch you with a clean slate, she whispered. If you run again, I'll just have to have you preserved. A perfect specimen, forever. Chapter 1. The air in the hospital's executive suite smelled of antiseptic and lilies. Isabella Thorne, a thick bandage wrapped around her head, stared blankly at the ceiling. Who are you? She asked, her voice a fragile whisper. Why can't I remember anything? Her slender fingers clutched the white comforter, knuckles pale. The door flew open, kicked in by her father, Conrad Thorne. He stormed in, waving a stack of documents like a battle standard. A bodyguard immediately locked the door behind him. My darling girl, not remembering is the best thing that could have happened. Conrad slapped the papers down on the bedside table, rattling the water glass. He spun on me, his eyes, burning with hatred, finding me in the corner of the room. He looked like a bull ready to charge. Leo Vance, you signed this. Conrad pulled a cashier's check from his breast pocket and flung it at me. It hit my chest and fluttered to the floor. The blocky print, $50 million, seared my retinas. Take the money, divorce my daughter, and get lost. Go to Phuket, go to hell, I don't care. Just stay out of her life, forever. I stared at the check on the floor, my throat suddenly dry. I swallowed hard. 3 years. For 3 entire years, Isabella Thorne, the billionaire CEO of Thorne Industries, had kept me locked away in her palatial mansion. My phone was bugged. My every trip outside had to be pre-approved, and if I so much as glanced at another woman for a fraction of a second, I'd be subjected to her glacial, soul-piercing stare for the rest of the day. And now, she had amnesia. My hand trembled as I bent down to pick up the check. Mr. Thorne, I don't know if this is right. I managed, fighting to keep my lips from twitching into a grin. I squeezed out a couple of crocodile tears for effect. Don't you dare call me that. Shut your mouth. Conrad's spit flew as he pointed at my nose. You useless, gold-digging freeloader. If Isabella hadn't been out of her damn mind when she married you, you never would have even made it past our front gate. Her losing her memory is a goddamn miracle. I hung my head, my shoulders shaking violently. Conrad probably thought I was sobbing. In reality, I was pinching my thigh so hard I was about to draw blood, just to keep from laughing out loud. Okay, I choked out. I'll sign. I grabbed the pen from the nightstand. The scratching sound it made across the divorce papers was the sweetest music I'd ever heard. The moment the last signature was complete, I tossed the pen, snatched the check, and ran. I didn't dare risk a single glance at Isabella in the hospital bed. I was terrified she'd suddenly regain her memory and scream, break his legs. For hours later, I was in a first-class seat to Phuket, a glass of champagne in hand, gazing out at the endless expanse of white clouds. The sweet taste of freedom. I took a sip. The bubbles popped on my tongue, sending a fizz of pure joy all the way down to my gut. The sun in Phuket was blinding, the sand scorching hot. I was decked out in a loud Hawaiian shirt and sunglasses, lounging on a beach chair. Up ahead, 3 European girls in bikinis were playing volleyball. The ball arced through the air, and as they leaped for it, the sun glinted off their tan skin. I took a long sip of fresh coconut water, the cool liquid a balm to my throat. Now, this is living. Just then, a sea breeze drifted past, carrying a familiar, spine-chillingly cold fragrance. It was the custom-blended perfume Isabella always wore. Every hair on my body stood on end. A layer of cold sweat instantly glued my shirt to my back. I whipped my head around. Nothing. Just a few vendors selling coconuts and an old man in a straw hat. PTSD. It's gotta be PTSD, I muttered, patting my chest and forcing myself to look away. After 3 days, I'd had my fill of Phuket. I booked a flight to the Maldives. My overwater bungalow had a glass floor, revealing a kaleidoscope of tropical fish swimming below. I just stepped out of the shower, a towel wrapped around my waist and an ice-cold beer in my hand, and walked onto the private deck. The ocean breeze was perfect, and then I felt it. A sticky, predatory gaze, slithering up my body like an ice-cold vine and wrapping itself tightly around my neck. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the beer bottle. The feeling was sickeningly familiar. I turned around, my movements stiff and robotic. Leaning against the deck's wooden railing was a woman. She was dressed in an impeccably tailored black power suit that seemed shrink-wrapped to her body. The button at her chest was strained to its absolute limit, threatening to pop free at any moment and reveal a curve so deep and commanding it felt like an act of aggression. The fabric was stretched so tight over her G-cup bust that every breath she took was a display of lethal temptation. Isabella. The bandage was gone. The sea wind whipped through her long, dark hair. And those eyes, red-rimmed with obsession, were locked onto me. In one hand, she playfully dangled a pair of solid gold handcuffs, the links clinking together softly. A pathological smile crept across her lips. She took a step toward me on her 4-inch stilettos. The sharp clack of her heels on the wooden deck sounded like a hammer striking my heart. "Hello, Mr. Prey." She stopped inches from me, tilting her head up. Her warm breath ghosted across my collarbone. "You smell an awful lot like my future husband. How about we just skip the dating part and get straight to the point?" Chapter 2. The beer bottle slipped from my grasp. It shattered on the deck, the explosion of glass and golden liquid splashing across my bare feet. The chill shot straight up my spine. I swallowed hard, my Adam's apple bobbing. You have amnesia, right?" I took a step back, my spine hitting the sliding glass door. There was nowhere left to go. Isabella advanced, her heels crunching on the broken glass with a sound that set my teeth on edge. She raised a single finger, her nail painted a deep crimson and traced a line down my chest. "Amnesia." She tilted her head, her eyes gleaming with a manic light. "Oh yes, I don't remember a thing." She leaned in, her voice a low, husky whisper in my ear. "But the moment I saw you, my heart started pounding. It told me something. It told me that if I don't lock you up, if I don't hide you away where only I can see you, I'm going to die." Her crazy head leveled up. My scalp prickled as if 1,000 needles were stabbing it. There was only one word in my mind: run. I shoved her away. My towel fell to the deck, but I didn't care. I scrambled back into the room, my feet slicing on the broken glass, and grabbed my pants from the sofa. I didn't even think about my wallet or passport. I yanked open the door and bolted. "And where do you think you're going?" Her voice floated after me, a ghostly whisper that clung to my skin. I didn't look back. I just ran, pumping my arms, sprinting down the long wooden pier. Splinters pierced the soles of my feet, leaving little bloody prints behind, but I couldn't feel the pain. I burst into the Malé airport and used the last of the cash in my Apple wallet to buy a ticket for the next flight out. Destination: Bali. The moment the plane took off, I collapsed into my seat, gasping for air, my chest heaving. A flight attendant leaned over me, her expression concerned. "Sir, are you all right?" I pulled a blanket over my head and shut my eyes. "I'm fine, irasped." I just saw a ghost. The heat hit me like a physical blow the moment I stepped out of the airport in Denpasar. I ducked behind a pillar and dialed my buddy, Kevin Rodriguez. The phone rang 7 times before he picked up. "Yeah, what? Who is this?" "It's the middle of the night." Kev's voice was thick with sleep. "Kev, it's me, Leo," I whispered, my eyes darting around nervously. "Now, dude, I thought you took $50 million to go live it up in Phuket. Why do you sound like you're on the run from the mob?" No time, man. I'm at the airport in Bali. You have to come get me. Isabella found me. 3 seconds of dead silence on the other end. Holy crap. Didn't she lose her memory? Don't move. I'm on my way. Half an hour later, a beat-to-hell Jeep screeched to a halt in front of me. Kev leaned out, wearing a pair of ridiculously oversized aviator sunglasses. Get in. I dove into the passenger seat, and the Jeep roared away. What the hell is going on? Kev demanded, wrestling with the steering wheel. I told him everything that had happened in the Maldives. He slammed on the brakes. The tires shrieked against the asphalt, and my forehead smashed into the windshield. Are you insane? I roared, rubbing the new lump on my head. Leo, dude, are you having paranoid delusions? Kev took off his sunglasses to stare at me. She lost her memory. How could she track you halfway across the world? It has to be a coincidence. You probably just saw someone who looked like her. Dude, her chest is unforgettable. I'd know it anywhere. I yelled back. Kev swallowed, his gaze instinctively dropping for a second. Okay, fair point. So what's the plan now? Find somewhere nobody knows me. And hide. Kev took me to a remote village in the northern highlands of Bali. There was no internet, no cell service, nothing but banana trees and monkeys. I moved into a thatched roof hut and survived on instant noodles and bananas. 3 days passed in peace. My frayed nerves finally began to settle. That night, I sat on the hut's doorstep, watching the stars. Looks like I finally shook her, I sighed in relief. Suddenly, a cold gust of wind blew past, and the hut's flimsy door creaked open. I spun around. In the darkness, a pair of red-rimmed eyes stared back at me. Chapter 3. My heart stopped. I scrambled backward on my hands and feet until my back hit the rough mud wall. Who's there? I grabbed a nearby stick, pointing it into the darkness. It trembled in my hand like a divining rod. A figure stepped out of the shadows. It wasn't Isabella. It was Kev. He held a flashlight under his chin, casting his face in a ghoulish white light. Now, what are you doing? See a ghost. Kev clicked off the flashlight and tossed a bag of ramen at my feet. I dropped the stick and slid to the floor, letting out a long, shaky breath. You walk like a ninja, man. You trying to give me a heart attack? Kev crouched in front of me and lit a cigarette, the flame illuminating his worried frown. Leo, we've got a problem. He exhaled a puff of smoke that dissipated in the humid air. Conrad Thorne put a bounty on your head. $1 million. I shot up, grabbing the front of his shirt. What for? I signed the papers. I took the money. Kev gently pried my hands off. Isabella's condition got worse after she went back to the States. She doesn't recognize anyone. She even bit her father. The only thing she does, all day, every day, is draw pictures of you. She's filled the entire mansion with them. A wave of nausea washed over me. Conrad has no choice. He needs you to come back and calm her down. I'm not going back. I shot to my feet and kicked the bag of ramen across the dirt floor. Going back is a death sentence. What she feels isn't love. It's a sickness. A twisted need to own me. Kev stood up and put a hand on my shoulder. I know. That's why I got you a ticket to Fiji. On a cargo ship. It's off the books, no records. He pressed a crumpled ticket into my hand. It leaves tonight. At midnight, the air at the Bali port was cold and sharp with the smell of salt. I huddled in a worn-out jacket, blending in with a crowd of migrant workers as I boarded a freighter bound for Fiji. The hold reeked of diesel and fish. I found a corner and curled into a tight ball. The waves slapped against the hull with a dull, rhythmic boom. I must have drifted off. In my dream, Isabella was walking toward me, smiling, dangling those solid gold handcuffs. Leo Vance, you can't run from me. I woke with a jolt drenched in sweat. The hold was silent except for the swaying of a single dim bulb. I stood up, needing air, and headed for the stairs. As I reached the bottom step, I heard footsteps above. The crisp sound of leather shoes on the steel deck. Holding my breath, I flattened myself against the wall. A figure descended the stairs. It was one of Conrad Thorne's bodyguards. He was holding a photo, using the dim light to compare it to the sleeping men in the hold. My blood ran cold. How did they find me here? I scanned the hold and saw a stack of wooden crates at the far end. Crouching low, I crept behind them. The bodyguard's footsteps drew closer. He stopped right in front of crates. I clamped a hand over my mouth, terrified he'd hear me breathe. Come on out, Mr. Vance. I know you're in there, the bodyguard said, his voice devoid of emotion. I shut my eyes, my heart hammering against my ribs. Just then, the ship lurched violently. The bodyguard stumbled back a step to catch his balance. It was my only chance. I exploded from behind the crates and drove my fist straight into his nose. He let out a choked cry and crumpled to the floor. I didn't wait. I sprinted up the stairs and burst onto the deck. The sea wind hit me, carrying the sting of salt spray. I ran to the ship's railing and looked down. The black water churned below like the maw of some great beast. "Don't move." The bodyguard was right behind me, a taser in his hand. Blue sparks crackled at its tip. I clenched my jaw, closed my eyes, and jumped. The icy ocean swallowed me whole. Chapter 4 saltwater flooded my nose and mouth, a burning shock to my system. I flailed wildly, kicking and clawing my way back to the surface. The freighter's engine noise faded into the night, its lights shrinking to a distant star. There was nothing around me but endless, rolling darkness. "Help!" I choked out, but the wind snatched the word away. Just as my strength gave out and my body started to sink, a piece of floating driftwood bumped against my shoulder. I clung to it like it was the hand of God. I don't know how long I drifted. By the time the sky began to lighten, the waves had pushed me onto a sandy beach. Every bone in my body ached. I lay there, face down in the sand, just breathing. Where am I? I forced my head up. A short distance away, a wooden sign read, "Welcome to Fiji." I had actually made it. I struggled to my feet and dragged myself inland. I found a cheap motel and paid for a room with the last few dollars I had on me. After a hot shower, I lay on the stiff mattress, staring at the ceiling. Thorne's men will track me here. I can't stay long. I forced myself up and peeked through a slit in the curtains. The street below seemed calm. Suddenly, my eyes locked on something. A black SUV was parked across from the motel. The window was down, and a man in sunglasses was staring directly at my building. It was the bodyguard. He had beaten me here. I yanked the curtains shut, my back pressed against the wall, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I had to get out. Now, the room had a small window in the back. I pushed it open, dropped into a trash-filled alley, and ran without looking back. After several blocks, I plunged into a bustling marketplace, a chaotic symphony of vendors hawking fruit and fish. I tried to disappear into the crowd. A hand clamped down on my arm. I flinched, spinning around with my fist raised. "Leo, it's me." Kevin tore off a straw hat, his face etched with worry. "What are you doing here?" I hissed, grabbing his shoulders. "Thorne put a block on all commercial flights in your name. I had to pay a smuggler to get me here," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Come on, it's not safe." He pulled me through the market and into a battered van. We took off, bouncing down a rough mountain road. "Where are we going?" I asked. "The Seychelles," Kevin said. "I know a guy who can get us there." I leaned back and closed my eyes. When would this nightmare of running ever end? 2 days later, we were in the Seychelles, an island nation in the Indian Ocean. It was paradise, but to me, it was just a prettier cage. We hid out in a remote fishing village, keeping a low profile. I started to think, just maybe we were finally safe. Until one evening, I was sitting on a seaside cliff, watching the sunset bleed across the water. Behind me, I heard the sound of high heels on rock. Clack, clack, clack. My heart seized. The sound was etched into my very bones. I turned, my body rigid. Silhouetted against the setting sun stood Isabella. She wore a crimson slip dress, the sea breeze molding it to her body. The red silk did little to contain her formidable curves, the deep shadows of her cleavage shifting with every breath. She took off her sunglasses. Those red-rimmed eyes locked onto me. "Leo Vance, you're quite the runner, aren't you?" A sick smile touched her lips. In her hand, she held the solid gold handcuffs. "But the game is over." She walked toward me, each step a hammer blow to my sanity. I backed away until my heels were hanging over the edge of the cliff. Below me, the waves crashed against the rocks. "Stay back," I yelled, my voice trembling. "You lost your memory. Why won't you just leave me alone?" Isabella stopped, tilting her head. "I told you, I don't remember anything. But there's one thing I know for sure." She lunged, grabbing the front of my shirt. "You are mine." Chapter 5. The force of her tackle sent us both tumbling backward onto a patch of soft sand behind the rocks. She landed on top, pinning me down. The strap of her red dress slipped off one shoulder, revealing a breathtaking expanse of pale skin and that suffocatingly deep curve. Her warm, frantic breaths washed over my face. "Run. Why did you stop running?" Her fingers clamped onto my jaw like a vice, her nails digging into my skin. I stared up at that impossibly beautiful, terrifyingly insane face. "Let me go. We're divorced. Your father gave me $50 million. I spat the words through gritted teeth. Isabella froze. The madness in her eyes seemed to pause for a beat, then erupted into an even more violent storm. "Divorced? $50 million. She started to laugh, a hysterical sound that made her shoulders shake and the swell of her chest tremble with a power that was both mesmerizing and horrifying. "That old bastard, Conrad, actually dared to sell you behind my back." She ripped open my shirt, the buttons scattering. Her cold fingers pressed against my bare chest. "And you worthless piece of trash. You sold yourself for a pathetic $50 million? Is that all I'm worth to you?" My skin crawled. "That's not the point. The point is you're a psychopath." "Isabella, calm down," I said, trying to reason with a hurricane. "You have amnesia. You don't even know who I am. This is just some twisted instinct." "Instinct?" She lowered her head and bit down hard on my collarbone. "Act." I sucked in a sharp breath, shoving at her shoulders, but she was impossibly strong. "Yes, instinct," she whispered, licking a speck of blood from her lips, her eyes glazed over. "And my instinct is telling me to lock you in a cage, to give you nothing but water, to make it so you can only look at me, only depend on me for your very survival." She raised the gold handcuffs, and, with a soft click, she locked one cuff around my right wrist. Just as she reached for my left, a rock flew through the air and slammed into the back of her hand. "Ouch!" Isabella cried out, dropping the handcuffs in the sand. "Leo, run!" Kevin scrambled out from behind the rocks, holding an even bigger rock. I seized the opportunity, shoving Isabella off me and scrambling to my feet. The half-shackle on my wrist clanked as I moved. "Kev, you're the man," I yelled, sprinting away without a second glance. Behind me, Isabella let out a furious, primal scream. "Leo Vance, you go back here. I'll break your legs." We tore through the village. Kev shoved me into a rusty pickup truck. "The airport. Go!" I roared. The truck fishtailed down the dirt road. I checked the rearview mirror. No one was following. "Leo, that woman is evil. How did she find us?" Kev panted, wiping sweat from his face. I stared at the gold cuff on my wrist, and a horrifying realization dawned on me. There's a GPS tracker in this thing. My face went pale. I smashed the cuff against the passenger window. The glass held firm, sending a shock of pain up my arm. "It's not breaking. It must be titanium." I slumped back in the seat, utterly defeated. Kev slammed on the brakes. "So where to now?" I pulled up a map on his phone, my eyes scanning the globe. They landed on one name. Mauritius. I gritted my teeth. If I can't hide from her, I'll fight back. She thinks she has amnesia? Fine. I'll use it against her. I'm going to make her give up on me herself. 10 hours later, we landed in Mauritius. This time, I didn't hide. I booked the presidential suite at a luxury beachfront resort. I sat on a plush sofa in the grand lobby, swirling a glass of red wine, my legs crossed. A silk handkerchief was carefully wrapped around my wrist, hiding the handcuff. I was waiting for the predator to walk into my trap. If hiding in the shadows made me prey, then I would stand in the spotlight and set a snare of my own. 3 hours later, the glass doors of the lobby slid open. Isabella strode in, flanked by a team of black-suited bodyguards. She wore a pristine white suit, her power radiating through the room like a cold front. The entire lobby seemed to hold its breath. Her eyes swept the room and landed on me with unnerving precision. With a flick of her hand, her men spread out, sealing off every exit. She walked over and stood before me, looking down at me as if I were something she'd scraped off her shoe. "Done running?" I took a sip of wine and offered her a mocking smile. "Getting tired? Have a seat, Ms. Thorne. Let's talk." Chapter 6. Isabella took the chair opposite me, crossing her legs with a fluid grace. Her white suit jacket was open, revealing a black silk camisole underneath. The stark contrast only accentuated the astonishing curve of her bust, which strained against the delicate fabric as if threatening to break free. The red sole of her Christian Louboutin heel bobbed gently in the air. Talk about what? Your preferred color for your new cage. She folded her hands in her lap, her gaze predatory. I set my glass down and leaned forward, meeting her eyes. Let's talk about your missing memories. I pulled a stack of photos from my pocket and scattered them across the table. They were all candid shots of me and Kevin living it up on various islands, surrounded by a rotating cast of bikini-clad women that Kev had paid to pose with us. Take a look, I said, my tone dripping with casual disdain. Ms. Thorne, that instinct you feel for me? It's a delusion. You were never in love with me. You used me as a release valve, a plaything. Isabella's gaze fell to the photos, her brow furrowing slightly. I pressed my advantage. For 3 years, you were out every night with a different man. I was just the guy you kept at home to maintain a respectable image. The only reason you're obsessed with me now is because right before your accident, I cleaned out your private accounts and skipped town. Your subconscious doesn't love me. It hates me. It can't stand that I was the one who played you for a fool. I watched her face, searching for any sign that my story was landing. If she believed I was nothing but a low-life con artist, her pride would never allow her to chase me again. She picked up a photo. In it, I had an arm around 2 blonde models, a greasy, self-satisfied smirk on my face. Her fingers tightened, crumpling the photograph. Is that true? Her voice was thin, unsteady, as if she were barely holding something back. Every word, I said, leaning back and spreading my hands. Your father's $50 million payout was just to get rid of the parasite. Coming after me now just makes you look pathetic. The lobby was dead silent. Isabella's head was bowed, her long hair hiding her expression. I could see her shoulders trembling. It's working. A wave of triumph washed over me. I had shattered her self-conception. No self-respecting billionaire CEO would continue to pursue the man who'd conned and humiliated her. She'd slap me, tell me to get lost, and I'd be free. So, Ms. Thorne, take your men and go. We're even. I raised my glass for a silent toast to my victory. Suddenly, Isabella looked up. There was no anger on her face. No humiliation. There was only a chilling, feverish excitement. She shot to her feet, slamming her hands on the table and leaning so far forward that the oppressive curve of her chest was inches from my face. So, you're really that much of a scumbag. Her voice was sickly sweet, her eyes glowing with a renewed, manic light. You stole my money. You slept with other women. You played me for a fool. She ran her tongue over her lips. This is wonderful. My wine glass froze halfway to my lips. My brain short-circuited. This is not the right reaction. What did you say? I stammered. I said, this is wonderful. She swatted the glass from my hand. It shattered on the floor, splashing red wine across my white shirt like blood spatter. She grabbed my collar and hauled me clean off the sofa. I was worried that locking you up might be a little cruel. But if you're just a lying, cheating piece of garbage, then there's nothing I can do to you that you don't deserve, is there? She leaned in, her whisper a blade of ice against my ear. Now I can have you stuffed and mounted with a clear conscience. And don't you worry. I'll find every single one of those women who touched you, and I'll cut off their fingers one by one. The blood in my veins turned to ice. Shit, my reverse psychology had failed. Catastrophically. The idea of my betrayal hadn't repulsed her. It had unlocked her final boss form. Man, Isabella barked. The bodyguards closed in. Tie him up. Take him to Tahiti. Wait. I was kidding. The photos are photoshopped. I struggled, my panic absolute. Isabella just smiled coldly and chopped the back of my neck with the side of her hand. Everything went black. Chapter 7, I woke to the gentle sound of waves lapping against the shore. My eyes snapped open. I was lying on a massive, circular waterbed. The mattress was as soft as a cloud, but a deep, penetrating chill filled my bones. My wrists and ankles were shackled to the 4 corners of the bed with gleaming silver chains. They clinked with my every move. I thrashed against them, but the chains held fast, digging into my skin. Don't waste your energy. The voice came from the shadows. Isabella emerged, holding a glass of red wine. She wore a sheer black nightgown and was barefoot. The bright Tahitian sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, backlighting her figure. The flimsy fabric did nothing to conceal her explosive silhouette, which seemed to dominate the room with its sheer, aggressive presence. She walked to the bed and looked down at me, the way a collector might admire a newly acquired masterpiece. Custom-made titanium alloy. They only opened for my fingerprint. She sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers lightly tracing the line of my jaw. See? You ended up back in my bed after all. We played a fun little game of cat and mouse across half the planet. Did you enjoy it? I clenched my teeth and glared at her. Isabella, what the hell do you want from me? You have amnesia. Why can't you let me go? The smile, amnesia. She let out a cold, hollow laugh. The manic gleam in her eyes faded, replaced by an expression of pure, condescending ice. Leo, you can't possibly be stupid enough to think I actually lost my memory. My pupils dilated. My heart felt like it had been seized by an invisible hand. You were faking it? If I didn't fake it, how would I have ever gotten that snake Conrad to show his hand? How else would he have felt confident enough to push you out so he could bring his illegitimate son into the company to take over? Isabella released me and walked to the window, gazing out at the endless blue ocean. I knew he was planning to make a move. That car accident? He arranged it. She turned back to me, her eyes as sharp as daggers. So I played along. I pretended to be a vegetable and let him think he'd won. And then I watched him get rid of you. My mind was reeling, trying to piece it all together. Then why hunt down? If you were setting a trap for your father, why did you care what I did? I roared. Isabella returned to the bed, leaning over me, her hands planted on either side of my head. The sheer pressure of her presence was suffocating. Because you ran, she said, her voice suddenly breaking, sounding like a little girl whose favorite toy had been stolen. I just wanted to use this as a chance to see if you had even a tiny shred of real feeling for me. And what did you do? You took the 50 million and ran faster than anyone I've ever seen. You were in Phuket ogling women in bikinis. You were in the Maldives drinking beer. You didn't even look back once. Hot tears welled in her eyes and fell, splashing onto my neck. They were scalding. I loved you so much. You were my entire world, and you treated me like I was just some psycho. She dove down, sinking her teeth into my shoulder. The sharp, metallic taste of blood filled the air. I didn't fight back, because it all suddenly made a horrifying kind of sense. From the very beginning, I was just a pawn in her game. She used her amnesia as a cover to purge her enemies from the family business, and she used the globe-spanning chase as the ultimate loyalty test for me. And I had failed, spectacularly. So, your father is dealt with now? I asked, my voice flat, ignoring the searing pain in my shoulder. Isabella lifted her head, my blood staining her lips. Of course. He's enjoying his retirement in a federal prison. The entire Thorn Industries is mine now. She licked the blood from the corner of her mouth. And you, Leo Vance, you have no one left to protect you. For the rest of your life, you belong to me. You're never going anywhere ever again. I looked at her insane, triumphant face and started to laugh. A deep, hollow laugh that shook my entire body and made the chains rattle. Isabella frowned. What are you laughing at? Have you lost your mind? I stopped, my expression turning clear and sharp, almost pitying. Isabella, you really think you've won? I took a deep breath and delivered the one secret that would shatter her world. You seem to have forgotten. The day before your accident, you had me sign an authorization form for an overseas trust. Chapter 8, Isabella's expression froze. Her pupils contracted to pinpricks, and the weight of her body, which had been pressing down on me, suddenly lifted. What are you talking about? She stammered, a flicker of genuine panic in her eyes for the first time. I stared at the ceiling, my voice calm and even. That trust holds the largest pool of Thorn Industries offshore assets. It's valued at over $3 billion. To protect it from your father, you made me the sole beneficiary and executor. I turned my head to meet her disbelieving gaze. While you were playing your little amnesia game, I was busy. You think I was just on a $50 million vacation. A cold smile touched my lips. I went to Phuket to meet with the trust's agent in Thailand. I went to the Maldives to begin liquidating the offshore accounts. Bali, Fiji, the Seychelles, every island, every move was another step in systematically laundering your offshore empire into my personal, untraceable accounts. Isabella stumbled backward, hitting the glass of the window with a dull thud. Impossible. You're not that smart. You're just a freeloader who lived off my money, she shrieked, her finger trembling as she pointed at me. Desperation is a powerful motivator. I gave a sharp tug on the chains. You kept me as your pretty little bird in a gilded cage for 3 years. I had to build myself a backdoor. As of right now, the entire offshore funding pipeline for Thorn Industries has been severed. All I have to do is press a button on my phone, and your domestic operations will collapse into bankruptcy by morning. The room was utterly silent, save for the sound of the waves. Isabella stared at me, her chest heaving, the magnificent curve of her bust rising and falling with each ragged breath. She lunged at me, grabbing a fistful of my hair. You dare threaten me? Do you have any idea how easy it would be for me to kill you right now? Kill me. I met her crazed gaze without flinching. Kill me, and that $3 billion is locked away forever. You, Isabella Thorn, will go from a titan of industry to a bankrupt nobody. Are you really willing to throw it all away? Her hand froze. The madness, the fury, the shock in her eyes swirled together and collapsed into a look of profound despair. She let go, her body slumping as if her strings had been cut. She sat on the edge of the bed, defeated. Why? She whispered, covering her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. I just wanted to keep you with me. What did I do that was so wrong? You confused a person with a possession, I said coldly. Now, unlock the chains. Isabella didn't move. She looked up, her eyes red and swollen, her makeup smeared by tears. Then, in a move that completely blindsided me, she threw herself onto the bed, wrapped her arms around my waist, and buried her face in my chest. No, I'll never let you go, she sobbed, clinging to me like a child. Let the company go bankrupt. I don't want the $3 billion. As long as I can keep you locked up here, I'd rather be a beggar on the street. I was stunned, completely and utterly stunned. This was not how the script was supposed to go. Any rational CEO, faced with financial ruin, would negotiate. They would cut their losses. But this woman would rather burn her entire empire to the ground than lose her favorite toy. Are you insane? That's $3 billion, not 300. I yelled. I don't care. I can always make more money. But if you leave, I'll never find you again. She looked up, her face a mess of tears, but her eyes held a terrifying, stubborn resolve. Leo Vance, you can say whatever you want, but I am never, ever letting you go. We can starve to death on this island together for all I care. I closed my eyes in utter despair. I had planned for everything. I had leveraged greed, logic, and the fundamental principles of business. But I had forgotten one crucial variable. A psychopath doesn't operate on logic. Just as I was about to resign myself to my fate, the door to the room was kicked open with a tremendous crash. Lau, I'm here to save you. Kevin stood in the doorway, holding a roaring chainsaw above his head like a post-apocalyptic hero. Isabella's head snapped toward him, her expression turning glacial. You again, you fat little cockroach. She stood up, calmly picked up the half-empty bottle of red wine from the nightstand, and smashed it against the bedpost. The bottle shattered, leaving her with a jagged, deadly weapon. Holding the broken bottle, she started walking toward Kevin. Today, nobody is taking him from me. Chapter 9, Kev stood there, the chainsaw buzzing in his hands, watching the murderous glint in Isabella's eyes as she advanced on him. He swallowed hard. Leo, my man, I think she might actually be crazier than the chainsaw. Kevin's legs started to shake. Kev, get out of here. Run. Call the cops. I yell, my voice raw. Isabella smirked. Call the cops. On Tahiti, I am the law. She moved with a startling, predatory grace, sidestepping Kev's clumsy swing of the chainsaw and pressing the jagged edge of the broken bottle against his throat. A thin line of red appeared on his skin. Kev froze solid. The chainsaw clattered to the floor. Mom, Isabella, let's just talk about this, okay? No sudden moves, he stammered, his hands shooting up in surrender. Isabella didn't even look at him. Her gaze was locked on me. You want to leave, Leo? Go on. Let's see you try. She applied the slightest pressure to the bottle. A bead of blood trickled down Kevin's neck. My heart constricted. I had gambled with money, with power, but I couldn't gamble with my friend's life. Stop, I roared, my own eyes turning red. I'll stay. Just let him go. A triumphant smile spread across Isabella's face. She tossed the broken bottle aside and patted Kevin's cheek. "Get out." Looking like he'd just been granted a stay of execution, Kevin scrambled out of the room, throwing me a desperate, "I did my best, bro" look over his shoulder. The room was quiet again. Isabella walked back to the bed and looked down at me. She reached out and gently stroked my chest, feeling the rapid, angry beat of my heart. "You see? In the end, you still chose me." Her voice was a terrifyingly soft caress. "You gave up your freedom for an outsider. That must mean you still care about me, right?" I closed my eyes, a wave of nausea rolling through me. "You win, Isabella, but all you've won is an empty shell." She chuckled, a low, throaty sound. She leaned down, her lips brushing against my ear. "That's fine. As long as the shell is yours, I'll take it." For the next 3 days, I was her prisoner. She took my phone, my watch, anything that could be used to communicate. The windows were replaced with bulletproof glass. She fed me every meal by hand. She bathed me. At night, she would lie beside me, her eyes wide open, just watching me sleep. Her constant, suffocating gaze was pushing me to the brink of insanity. Then, on the 4th night, a tropical storm hit the island. The wind howled, rain lashed against the glass, and thunder cracked the sky open. The villa's power grid failed, plunging the room into absolute darkness. Isabella screamed. She threw herself on top of me, clinging to me for dear life. Her entire body was trembling, and a cold sweat soaked through her silk nightgown. I froze. This fearless, indomitable woman, who saw $3 billion as pocket change, was afraid of thunderstorms? "Leo, hold me. I'm scared." Her voice was small and terrified, like a lost child's. Feeling her body quake against mine, an idea sparked in the darkness of my mind. This was my chance, my one and only chance to turn the tables. I didn't push her away. Instead, I wrapped my arms around her. "It's okay," I said, my voice as calm and steady as I could make it. "I'm here." Isabella flinched for a second, then burrowed even deeper into my embrace, as if trying to merge with me. In the dark, my fingers found what I was looking for, the key she kept under her pillow, the key to my chains. I carefully closed my hand around it, my heart pounding in my chest. The storm raged all night. The next morning, sunlight streamed back into the room. Isabella stirred, waking up in my arms. She looked up at me, and for a moment, the madness in her eyes was replaced by something soft, something akin to affection. "Last night, you didn't push me away," she said softly. I looked down at her, a cold smile touching my lips. "No, because if I had, I wouldn't have been able to get this." I opened my hand. Lying in my palm was the silver key. The color drained from Isabella's face. She lunged for it, but it was too late. I'd already inserted the key into the lock on my wrist. Click! The chain fell away. I was free. Chapter 10, I quickly unlocked my other wrist and ankles and swung my legs off the bed. Isabella just sat there, staring at the empty shackles, the light in her eyes slowly dying. "You're leaving again," she whispered, tears beginning to fall. "That's right," I said, pulling on my clothes. "And this time, I'm taking the $3 billion with me." I walked to the door and paused, my hand on the knob. "You know, Isabella, you can't force someone to love you by caging them. All you'll ever get is hatred." I opened the door and walked out into the blinding Tahitian sun without looking back. Kevin was waiting for me on the water in a seaplane. "Lau, you made it," he cried, his eyes filled with tears of relief. I climbed aboard, and as the plane took off, I watched the villa shrink into the distance. I felt no joy, no sense of victory, just a profound, soul-deep exhaustion. Back in the States, I used the authorization papers to seize control of all of Thorn Industries' offshore assets. Isabella's domestic empire, starved of cash, began to crumble. She never called. She never sent anyone after me. It was as if she had simply vanished from the face of the earth. 6 months later, I was sitting in her old office on the top floor of Thorn Tower, looking out at the city below. Kevin came in, holding a file. "Found her, Leo. She's in Palau." My hand, which had been flipping through a report, paused. "What's she doing?" "She opened a small guest house. Spends her days cleaning rooms and painting by the ocean." "The paintings, they're all of you." Kevin sighed. "You know, Leo, She had 100 chances to use what was left of her power to come after you, to start a war. But she didn't. She just walked away from it all and let you have it. I said nothing. My mind drifted back to that stormy night, to the way she trembled in my arms. So what are you going to do? Kevin asked. Finish her off? I stood up and walked to the window. I had it all. The $3 billion, the power, the freedom. But I wasn't happy. At night, the other side of the bed felt cold and empty. Habit is a terrifying thing. Kev, book 2 tickets to Palau, I said, my voice low. He stared at me. What for? Are you going to offer yourself up on a silver platter? I'm going to collect a debt. I straightened my tie. She owes me for 3 years of my life. $3 billion doesn't even begin to cover it. 3 days later, on a sun-drenched beach in Palau, I found her. In front of a modest wooden guest house, Isabella was wearing a plain white t-shirt and jean shorts, crouched in the sand, painting. On the easel was a portrait of me, sitting on the beach in Phuket, sipping from a coconut. I walked up behind her, my shadow falling over her canvas. She looked up. The moment she saw me, the paintbrush fell from her hand. Her eyes instantly filled with tears. Are you here to take me to prison? She asked, her voice trembling. I looked at her, then reached into my pocket. I pulled out the solid gold handcuffs and tossed them onto her easel. They landed with a soft clink, gleaming in the sun. Leo, she whispered, confused. I crouched down to meet her gaze. Listen to me, Isabella. You're not a CEO anymore. You're a bankrupt, washed-up nobody. I held my wrist out to her. And I'm your creditor. For the rest of your life, you're going to work to pay me back. Isabella stared at me, her eyes wide, before the tears finally broke free, streaming down her face. She threw herself into my arms, her hands clinging to the back of my neck as she sobbed like a child. Okay, I'll pay. I'll spend my whole life paying you back. I sighed and wrapped my arms around her, pulling her close. This goddamn, beautiful, crazy woman. In the end, her sickness was contagious. The sea breeze blew past, warm and salty. A strange thought surfaced in my mind, a line from some half-forgotten song. Just like that, you conquered me, cutting off every retreat.